Hello class, I wish to share an interesting concept with you today. It is very simple and easily comprehensible concept which all of us come across many a times. From getting a simple internet connection to more important credit cards or a bank loan needs filling up of forms. Nowadays, when we opt such services, we will notice that the sales executive from various institutions will simply ask us to bring our documents and put our signature on the form. The sales executive adopt the practices of getting things done faster to avoid losing the potential customer. Filling up of forms in any circumstance helps the customer and the firm to avoid future troubles and to facilitate easy functioning. So, now after giving all of you a brief idea of what exactly the content revolves around, we now acquaint ourselves with the concept of office management and methods which includes office forms, types of forms, advantages of forms and forms control. I shall give you a detailed explanation for each of the subtopics. First, come to the basic term office forms. It is this unit we are going to study what are office forms, why they are important and how office forms are controlled. In order to understand this is in a proper way, it is important for the students to follow the prescribed methodology. This would surely help the students to thoroughly comprehend every aspect of the same. 1. For studying this chapter, the student need to understand the various uses of forms. 2. Students are expected to design few forms practically. Students are also expected to solve the questions given. 4. Also solve the case study and design a form for practice. Now, let us understand the concept of forms. As the forms used within an organization often have multiple uses and destinations. They must be well designed and must be effective for their intended purpose. An effectively designed form does not just happen. Rather, its design is a result of diligent, purposeful effort. This chapter includes the different types of forms used in the office management which accumulates the information and transmit information for reference purposes. Through this, we shall know the utility of office forms and their advantages. After having understood this, you will be able to number 1, study the need of office forms, which means that an office form is a standardized record used to accumulate and transmit information. Thus, they are needed for collecting information, presenting information and for future purposes. Number 2, you would also know the advantages and types of office forms. Basically, forms can be classified on the basis of their operations for their office functions such as factory orders, requisitions, purchases, sales data and invoices, etc. To understand the concept of forms control, forms are an important element of an office system. As you know, they are a basic tool for all office activities. The term refers to the management of forms in a firm. 4. To understand the steps involved in forms control. In order to have an effective form control, certain steps like centralization of forms, the registration of forms, the investigation and the analysis of forms are taken. In brief, it can be said that forms are an important part of operations that aid in the collection and transmission of data to provide a record or a report necessary for the continuance of an agency's businesses. These forms must be well designed and well managed. This section of the manual will define recommended practices to aid in the design and management of an agency's firms. After knowing the brief idea about the forms, let us read the definition. Definition 1. The term form has been aptly defined by Littlefield as a piece of paper with fixed data and blank spaces for variable data. Definition 2. John B. Levocki, Director, Producer and Record Management Programs, RCA Corporation, Cherry Hills, New Jersey, defines a form as a piece of paper or a card containing constant information with space provided for the entry of variable information on a prescribed formed basis. Hence, we conclude this subtopic by inferring that a form is a tool used in the operations of an agency's business. It is a document on a paper or electronic media. Now, how is a form useful directly to the firms and indirectly to each individual? This can be very simply explained by the various points, highlighting the functions of forms in a brief. I shall very well clear the concept of form in your mind. A form initiates an action. It helps to conduct business in a firm. A form increases the efficiency of a firm, thereby facilitating easy functions of the same. Record transactions. A form records vital and important information of the firm. Each part of the information is managed and recorded in a sequential manner by the managers. Record information. Forms are also helps to record reports for future purposes. Thus, a firm optimizes the use of form for later references. Hence, reports are obtained in an easy manner. Now, that we know the basic functions of the forms, we move on the real life examples of the forms that we come across many a times. Here are few examples of forms used commonly: an invoice, a receipt, a cash memo, a purchase order, employment application, a checklist, a register, etc. These have a common feature and resemblance somewhere or other when it comes to characteristics. Having learnt about the basics of forms, we now move to where these forms are used. Also, how important they are to us. Forms are an important element in an office and it is a basic tool for collecting information in an office. To understand the types of forms, now that we come across forms in our daily life, we must also know what utility they serve to us. According to their types, a form is a tool used in operations for an agency's businesses. It is a document on paper or electronic media which is carefully designed to gather and transmit prescribed information. They are categorized on the basis of the needs and the scale of the firm. Here are few types of forms. Forms used in office: purchase order, sales order, invoice, forms used in banks, account opening, paying slip, statements. Forms used by the employees: application form, leave form, vouchers. Firstly, we talk about an invoice. Invoice, a non-negotiable instrument, means a paper / bill, document, voucher, invoice offered by seller to buyer which is not transferable. The holder of the instrument is the owner of the instrument, commercially instrument issued by a seller to a buyer. It identifies both the trading parties and leased, describes and quantifies the items sold, shows the date of shipment and mode of transport, prices and discount if any, and delivers the payment terms. An invoice includes the personal information of the customer, which includes the name, address, phone number and email address of the person concerned. The fixed information includes the name of the firm and its specifics. For example, when you shop at mall or buy any kind of commodity from a seller or many sellers, you get a bill in return. That bill is nothing but statement which act as a proof of purchases. It describes, identifies and quantifies the item you have purchased from the seller. Thus, such a statement has been named as an invoice. Registration form, a prototype of an instrument or a form to be used in a transaction that includes the primary essential matters, the appropriate technical phrases or terms, or to be known as basic information which is accurate, arranged in a suitable and systematic order. A registration form, as you all know, is what we come across at any education institute, hospitals, railway stations, job applications, etc. Thus, not to say much about them, they are basic version of all types of forms that one uses today. Cash receipt. Cash receipt simply means it is receiving cash or acknowledgement of receipt of cash. The source could be anything: a customer paying for the credit purchases, a customer paying you rent for using your equipments, interest received on investments, a cash receipt you received after paying the bill amount in the shop, etc. Purchase order. A purchase order, that is PO, is a commercial document issued by a buyer to a seller, indicating types, quantities and agreed prices for product or services the seller will provide to the buyer. Sending a PO to a supplier constitute a legal offer to buy products or services. Take a simple receipt. The name and address of the vendor and the word received from, which are constant and known, will be printed on it. So, will be an identifying number, there will be fixed data. There will be a blanks for filling the date, the amount and transaction in respect which the payment has been received, and the spaces will be left for the signature. Having told you about the types of forms, let me brief you about the nature of forms. When we talk about nature of forms, it tells us basically about the classification of nature on certain criteria. These criteria includes on how forms are designed and brought into use. A vividly talks about the features of forms in general. The nature of forms. The nature of forms varies according to the need. There is a form for almost every office activity. An invoice, a receipt, a cash memo, a purchase order, an employment application, a checklist, registers, etc. is a form. Forms patterns. Now we shall know the various patterns of forms in the office. The forms are the basic tool for collecting any information in structured pattern. The forms are used in different public offices, shops, departmental stores, educational institutes, banks and insurance offices, etc. The patterns of forms are fanfold, unit set, continuous. Fanfold. These forms are multiple copy sets which are distinctive in nature and carbon paper are interleaved between the folds, sometimes referred to as continuous form paper. Fanfold paper is specially manufactured paper for use with a feed printer. Its pages are attached by perforated folds and separated by tearing after the pages have been printed. Such pattern we usually see in banks or in insurance offices where we need to have the copy in duplicate manner. Unit set forms. These forms are separate forms and are not attached to other set. These forms are very versatile. Unit sets are ideal for handwritten matter. It is a single form and it has the production capabilities to meet your business document requirements. For example, order form. Continuous forms. These forms are attached to one another because of the perforations separating each form. They can be easily detached. Continuous forms are designed for large volume used at other workplace that need to be generate a large number of labels on a regular basis. For example, shipping labels, post office, etc. Do you know how the forms are going to help in a working of an office? It helps in many ways, but I would like to mention a few. Firstly, to simplify and to improve the system of working. 2. To standardize records, to gather and give information to the users, to identify records for future references. We all would be thinking how one classifies these forms, so I shall help you with that too. These classifications are based on their utility. Classification of office forms. Classifications. Number 1, according to the functions, accounting forms, purchase forms, sales forms, etc. Number 2, internal and external use. Internal use office forms such as memorandum of forms, requisitions, registers, etc. External uses forms such as order forms, invoices, statements, etc. Number 3, single copy or multiple part forms. For example, cash memo, invoices. Number 4, 1 or 2 wide forms, admission forms. The example for the 5th, plain punch cards, that is employee records and attendance. Number 6, forms that machines can read, that is for example, MICR, magnetic ink character recognition, that is used in banks and medical forms. Why does one use office forms? Or it can also be said that why does one feel the importance of forms nowadays? Need of using office forms. Each office routine involves the use of forms of one type or the other. Each form is required to be handled several times before it is finally filed in the proper file. For example, a college admission form is handled nearly 10 times before it is finally filed in the proper file. Common matter is printed on the form. Thus, the user of the form need not write this matter. It saves the time and energy of the user as well as the employee who processes the form. Forms enable the management to keep information in a specific format. This specific format enables the user to have a glance at it and locate information quickly. Thus, reference is quick and easy. Forms are of specific size and design. Thus, the filing of forms become easier and convenient. Forms can facilitate fixing of responsibilities. Forms also helps to bring uniformity in the office work. All of us perform action in order to derive benefits from it. Thus, here too, we use forms to derive some benefits. They may be monetary or non-monetary at the same time. Advantages of using office forms. Point number 1, simplify systems and routines. Office forms make it clear what type of information is it to be collected. As a result, forms simplify office systems and routines. For the smooth running of an office system, office forms are essential. Reduction in the cost of office operations. Office forms eliminate the needs of recopying repetitive or standardized information and thus saves time and energy. There is reduction in the cost of office operations. Point number 3, preservation of records. Office forms helps to preserve records of business or filing and future references. Since form preserve records, they also helps the office in achieving better procedures of planning. Facilitates operations. Office forms make for a uniformity in appearance and format. Point number 5, facilitates data processing. Forms provide a specific location for each item of required information. The work of data processing and reference is facilitated by the forms. Fixation of responsibility. With the help of forms, individual responsibility can be fixed by the providing a column in a form for initiate of the person who has filled in or checked the form at any stage of the work. Other services. Better services can be provided to the vendors, dealers, customers, shareholders, creditors and many more if forms are used as records and are properly preserved. Good forms project a good idea of the organization in front of public. Now we come towards the end of this topic. This is a new concept that I shall acquaint you with. You shall be aware about various facts and files of forms control. Forms control. As already stated, forms are an important element of an office system. They are the basic tools of an office activity. Generally speaking, all office forms are handled at least 3 times. Someone has to put the information on the form, someone has to read and understand it. After the information on the form has been written down, and many a time someone has to copy the information or the part of it on the other form. Then after everybody has seen it, the form is filed and bounded in the book form or destroyed. In the view of these facts, it is obvious that careful attention should be paid to the design, proper use and effective control of forms, for that would ensure appreciable savings to any office. This shall include objectives of forms control, guidelines of using forms control, steps involved in forms control. Here we shall conclude that forms are an important part of operations that aid in the collection and transmission of data to provide a record or a report necessary for the continuance of an agency's businesses. These forms must be well designed and well managed. This section of the manual will define and recommended practice to aid in the design and management of an agency's forms. In the view of these facts, it is obvious that careful attention should be paid to the design, proper use and effective control of forms, for that would ensure appreciable savings to an office. Forms control implies a proper design, printing, economical use and supply of forms, so that office work may be efficiently and effectively performed. I wish to conclude by stating that office management proficiency will help the organization and its members to prepare effective presentations, saves time, build good team spirit, make it easy for documentation and boost the overall morale of the organization. Thank you so much all of you for having been a part of this session, and office management wish you happy learning.